through didn't allow us to think about how culture should interact with economic policy making.
Corruption has become endemic in the Ghanaian society, and ordinary people encounter it, whether dealing with politicians, civil servants, public servants, your judiciary.
I want to dream, not just a dream as a vision, but I want to sleep and dream. And in my dream, Ghana, we have a single-digit interest rate economy. Ghana, no one should finish school after 4, 2, 3 years and he's home.
This year is going to be bigger and better. Leading experts across the globe converge right here in
Financial Economics Seminar, Ghana 2023. A round of applause, please. Thank you very much. And this year, the theme is on the impact of socio-economic policies on trade and industries and development economies. And for us as a country, we see ourselves classified as a developing economy, and rightly so. This conversation is placed within that context to make meaning for us as a country going forward. My name is Alfred Okanse, and I'm going to moderate this all-important conversation this morning. We're also live on Joy News on your TV. We're live on Go TV 145, channel 145, also on Joy News on TV, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And for the many of you who cannot join us in person, to connect with us across all the social media platforms, thank you very much. We'll start off with the chairman's introduction and get his remarks. As expected, because of the importance of this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, King Taki Taiko Churu II is a visionary leader with an impressive educational background, including a PhD in philosophy and leadership and an MBA in strategic management. As a paramount chief of the Ghana state, he actively promotes youth empowerment and makes valuable contributions to various institutions and many other things that he does to contribute to the development of not just the Ghana state, but the country as a whole. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's King Takitewia Churu II, is unable to be with us because of an emergency yesterday evening, which we're going to get details of. But the good thing is, he has delegated an equally competent person to be in his capacity this morning. And we have Ni Ahene Nunu III, the paramount chief of the Abola traditional area and the chief advisor to the Gamanche, His Royal Majesty King Takitewia Churu II. He's not here alone. He came with an entourage from the Ghana state. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's put our hands together for Ni Ahene Nunu III. We should kindly have his remarks, the chairman. Please, let's put our hands together as he makes his way up here for the chairman's remarks. Thank you very much.
Professor Adibanje, Honorable Dr. Stephen Amoa, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Kofi Adomako, Managing Director of the Ghana Commercial Bank, Mr. Clement Ose Amwako, President of Chamber and Commerce and Industry, Dr. Joseph Obin, the President of the GUTA, Nime Name, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, good morning. I first of all apologize on behalf of His Royal Majesty King Takitewia Churu, who is unable to be present with us this morning to chair this very important function. He sends his regards. I thank the organization for the privilege given. As we all know, we are here concerning the Seminar for Financial Economics 2023. Financial economics is the branch of economics characterized by the concentration of monetary activities in which money of one type or another is likely to appear on both sides of the trade. When we hear financial economics, then we think of governance. Therefore, when there is no proper finance, there is no good economy. At this point, we leave it for the experts to deliver their various speeches. You are all welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a rather short one, but please put your hands together for our chairman. Short and straight to the point, and we definitely are here to also get a lot more from our keynote speakers who are graciously seated already. Thank you very much for making the time to be here. Let's acknowledge our keynote speakers, which will be encouraging as well for you to prepare your questions, and when the question time is available, then they would also answer them for you. Let's put our hands together for them, please. Thank you very much. There are a few people, distinguished guests, who have also joined us, which I'm going to acknowledge them in no particular order. We have Mr. Kofi Adomakon, Managing Director, GCB Bank PLC, please. Let's put our hands together for him. Thank you very much. Also, Damshila Sechi, also a legal practitioner. She's here with us. Thank you very much. And we have Elodie Manem, French Embassy Economic Department, please. Thank you very much. Also here with us, we have agencies such as NITA, National Information Technology Agency, NITA, a rep from NITA. Okay, the Ministry of Transport. Ministry of Transport, thank you very much. Thank you. The Ministry of Trade and Industry, thank you very much. Zintex Portfolio Services. Zintex, okay, there you are, please. Let's put our hands together for them. The Ghana Commercial Bank, GCB, obviously the MD is here. If their staff members are not here, you know what's going to happen, but there are a few representatives behind as well. The First National Bank, First National Bank, First National Bank, okay, and Prudential Bank, Prudential Bank, there you are, please. Let's put our hands together for them as well. SIGA, State Interest Governance Authority, thank you very much. The Lands Commission, and District Integrity. Okay, thank you very much. And as we go on, I would acknowledge a few more who have also joined us. We're live on Joy News TV, also across all the social media platforms. We go straight to our keynote speaker's speech and to hear from the woman who has committed herself to ensuring that we acknowledge and prioritize data in our economic planning. Professor Atinoke Olusola Adebanji is a professor of statistics at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology here in UST. She's recognized for her expertise in statistics and data science. She holds a PhD in statistics and MPH in reproductive and public health. Professor Atinoke Adebanji is actively involved in promoting STEM education and is affiliated with several prestigious organizations across the world, including the International Statistical Institute and the International Biometric Society. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's put our hands together as we welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Atinoke Olusola Adebanji. Let's put our hands together for her. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm actually waiting for them to put my presentation. Please, while we wait for them, I'd like to say good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Royal Highness, all the speakers. May I stand on the existing protocol while I go through my presentation? It's not. I'm very sorry about this. I cannot control from here. So I have to give them a cue every time I want them to move to the next slide. Wow. So can you please stay on the first one? I wish I had it in front of me as well. That would have made it easier for me. All right. All protocol duly observed. Ladies and gentlemen, I am highly privileged to be here this morning as a keynote speaker. I also feel very humbled to be sharing the platform with this caliber of speakers that will also be coming up soon. So I look forward to a very interactive and informative session this morning. So with your kind permission, Your Royal Highness, I would like to share my thoughts on a topic that holds tremendous potential for shaping our society and improving the lives of the individuals. Today I'll be sharing my thoughts on data-driven socio-economic policies for enhanced trade and industry. And I'll be speaking from the perspective of a data scientist. So we have, will you please permit me to just go through my definition of socio-economic policies in the context of my discourse for this morning? So for me, socio-economic policies will refer to a set of measures. Slide 2, please. Thank you. To a set of measures, strategies and interventions that are implemented by governments and organizations to influence and shape the social and economic conditions within society. And these policies, they aim to address various aspects of social welfare, economic development, and the overall well-being of individuals and communities at large. And the objectives could vary. It could vary from education to employment to sustainability in environment, as well as public health, depending on the subject matter of interest. I would also like to mention here that socioeconomic growth or economic growth fluctuates, and it fluctuates with respect to the socioeconomic policies that are in place. So as a leader, it's very important to correctly diagnose the economic situation, and based on the information that you elicit from the diagnosis, to determine a treatment course and chart a path for future growth. It's just like a patient going to see a medical doctor. What treatment will be given to you is informed by the symptoms you present, as well as probably some diagnoses that are carried out on you. So I'd like to show a snapshot. Thank you. I'd like to show here a snapshot of the data analytics process. All economic diagnostics that you want to carry out rest on having the right data and a high level of analytical ability of your statisticians as well as your data scientists. And this rests on the ability to correctly read the data and to produce meaningful information from it. In doing this, they should be able to answer the following questions. Is this also working? No. So I can move away from this. It's okay. I'll just use this. Thank you. To be able to do this correctly, they have to be able to answer the question about what happened, what has happened. And by what has happened, we're talking about the descriptive analytics section. In doing this, they can also inquire about why this has happened. Whatever has happened in the economics, they can also inquire about why this has happened. And that would be when you're making an inquisitive analytic aspect. And from there, then you can then predict what is going to happen next or what is likely to happen next. And when you do this, you're doing this with some degree of probably certainty or probability or uncertainty, which can be quantified. And then when you're doing that aspect, that is the predictive analytics. And going from what you have predicted, you can also then answer the question of what do we do now and how do we do that? And that will be you're prescribing possible actions that can be taken or that should be taken. And going forward from there, you can then simulate the different scenarios and what kind of consequences your actions can also bring to bear or bring forth. And when you do that, then you're in the preemptive analytical stage. These are the systematic and iterative steps involved in extracting insight patterns and meaningful information from data. And data analytics typically involves the key stages that I have shown here, but the objectives and the questions you want to answer should be the first thing. Because whatever you do should be informed by what questions you want to answer and what the objectives you want to achieve are. And availability of data, because we have data, does not mean we use the data. And to use data does not actually mean you're also using it correctly. So we must have it, we must use it, and we must use it correctly. For instance, you could have data, I can go to a doctor with probably a headache from stress, and that would probably require some analgesics or paracetamol, and then probably tell me to avoid the stressful situations. I would not be expected to go through a brain surgery. So in that instance, you have used the information, but you have not used it correctly. Oh, great. The instruments of diagnosis and effective treatment are rooted in data and data analytics. And these are all rooted in statistics. Once things are seen from this perspective, we can easily see how policy changes affect our economic alignment. So we can see the interplay of trade, industry, and data, how they inform policies, and we can also check the impact of the policies and how economic alignment is achieved. We could, for instance, be asking if the deregulation of petroleum products in June of 2015, I think it was 16 there, about middle June of 2015, if this has translated into improved standard of living for Ghanaians, because it was meant to have us the access to save some funds. We can look at this by looking at the middle class poverty profile of Ghana. When you look at this preview, if you have a preview to look at this profile of the middle income persons in Ghana, and you can also juxtapose on this, how many households in Ghana actually spending more than 10% of their income on transportation. And this is the stipulated. Once you go beyond the 10%, then you're experiencing what is called the transport poverty. So when you ask this kind of question, then the question becomes, what was the objective for the deregulation? And is this objective being achieved? Of course, we can't blame declining standard of living and inflation on only fuel prices, but because transportation is a key component and is one of the major drivers of inflation. So we can then question the objective for introducing the deregulation in the first instance. Your Royal Highness and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is a bit awkward for me, please, but yeah. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, socio-economic policies are either in response to what is happening or a guide to a futuristic plan of the country. So we can ensure that policies are data-driven if we institutionalize the data value chain. When economic policies are made without the concomitant data and analytics, it creates a discordance in the economy and gives the impression of guesswork policy, and that we don't want. When policies are also devoid of concomitant data, it also hinders the buy-in by the people. And I'll give you an example. People want to know what the diagnosis is. We want to know what the course of treatment you're proposing is. In Nigeria, next one, please. It's working? Okay, good. Thank you very much. So I'll give you an example of what happened in Nigeria. In January of 2012, the former president then, Jonathan Goodluck, actually introduced the removal of fuel subsidy. And this was met with riots. It lasted for about 2 weeks, nationwide riots. And why did this happen? Let's fast forward to 2023 now. Just last month, the new president in his first day in office introduced the same thing. And there were no riots. At least as of today, there are still no riots. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. So for now, there are no riots. So what happened? The question then is, what is the difference between what was done then and what this new president has done? Between 2012 and 2023, what you see is a proliferation of information. And then the data analytics are in the public domain about the unsustainability of continuing to subsidize the fuel in Nigeria. There was information about what we're losing to neighboring countries through the smuggling of the fuel, in the volume and in the value as well. And this was all in the public domain. So the information was there when this other move was made. And so far, we see that people have been able to buy into the removal. Actually, the general attitude for now in Nigeria is about time too. We can't continue to give to neighboring countries at our own expense. So we see this, one of the articles was by PwC. It was a very nice article that expounded on that. Now I show here that data has become the lifeblood of modern society, and its impact on policy making is very profound. And we can see that data is integrated into every aspect of policy making here. We see it in trade, you can see it in supply chain optimization, you also see it in innovation and research. Any sphere of socio-economic development or economy and trade, we can see that data can be integrated into this. So data has become the lifeblood of modern society, and its impact on policy making is profound. It provides us with unprecedented insights into the challenges and opportunities that we face. It allows us to also make informed decisions and design effective policies. And one of the key benefits of policy making, of data in policy making, is its ability to enable evidence-based decision making. In the past, policy making was probably intuitive because we probably didn't even have sufficient data. But now, we have data, we have it in high volume, in high velocity, and we have it from several platforms. And we cannot but make use of what we already have at our disposal now. Your Royal Highness and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to share, or it's already moved ahead of me. Great. Please permit me to share some information about our trade. This information is from the World Bank and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and I'm looking at a 10-year window, which is 2010 and 2021. And from here, I don't know if the pointer would show here, it's too far off. And from here, we can see our leading export products. These are the 5 leading export products, and the leading one is gold. And our gold has 5 main destinations. It's going to Switzerland, it's going to United Arab Emirates, going to United States, India, and also making its way to China. And here in this map, you can see where you have changes, increase in export. If you see the yellow color says there's an increase in our export to those countries. The blue means there is a decline in our export to those countries in that 10-year window. And if you see here, you see that within Africa, we're actually experiencing intra-Africa decline. There's a decline because most of them is blue. If it's green, that means there's no change there. So we can see that the changes are actually going to the US and going to India, and it's also going to China. And this is a general overview of our foreign trade when you're looking at our top imports. And when I was doing this research for this talk, I was shocked to see that in 2021, Ghana was the world's biggest importer of used clothing. In 2021, how many are we in Ghana? How many clothes per person for us to top the world in used clothes? Not even new clothes. I was a bit worried about that. And now this is 2023. I hope the story is not still the same. So these are our top 5 import products, and these are where we actually import from. Next one. And in the same 10-year window that I'm considering for this session, you will see that our import, those are yellow. The yellow ones are where you have increases in importation. And you can see in that 10-year period, China and India is also going yellowish, but China is very yellow, you can see that. But every other place seems to be blue or green. So that means a lot of our imports are coming from two sources, India and China. And we can also look at this vis-a-vis our gross domestic product, where you have the red one, the orange one is the imports, and the blue one is the exports. This is expressed as a percentage of our gross domestic product. I'm not an economist, and I'm going to give the interpretation to the economic gurus. I'm just a statistician, but normally when you're looking at this kind of plots, they should be going upwards, not downwards. So I hope that they would help me explain what this is showing in their sessions. Next one. But to tell you that this kind of data that I've just shown you, these are highly aggregated data. And we cannot make informed decisions using this kind of aggregated data. What we need are disaggregated data. And for us to have the kind of disaggregated data, we must first recognize that data is a strategic asset for us to possess. When we have that mindset, then we can recognize the potential of data for providing or driving economic growth when we use it in our policy making. When we appreciate that, then we can put the right infrastructure in place and make sure that there's security for our data use. And that should give us our competitive advantage that we all seek. When we're able to do this, I want to show some of the areas in which I think we might accrue some dividends. By dividends, I'm sure the bankers know what I mean. So we will have some benefits accruing to us as a nation and for the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Then we can see that when we do this and appreciate that data is an essential asset for us, we will see the dividend in the opportunities that it can create for us in export. We will see that it can also give us competitiveness in our global trade. And furthermore, when we develop our evidence-based policies, we can also use this to leverage and protect our national industries. We can also use it to enhance the overall trade environment within our country. And furthermore, when we see it as a strategic asset, you can use data on research. We can use data on our patents. We can use data to create and stimulate an environment that promotes growth. And this is knowledge-intensive industries that I'm talking about. Growth in knowledge-intensive industries. When we are able to fully digitize our customs process, it will accrue efficiency. We can see faster clearance and more transparent duties being charged and all of that. And this is one of the benefits that we can derive if we see data as a strategic asset. Next one. When we also have the right kind of data, we can actually have a tailor-made trade and industrial strategies. These are very essential. These are essential because it helps you to develop products that are demand-driven, and it allows us to meet specific market demands. And using this, we can then develop export-oriented sectors within our economy. These are some of the advantages that we can derive when we do this. Yes. And finally, data can also be an alternative source of revenue because you can create data and you can sell it. We can actually sell data to third parties. If we create businesses that are data-based, businesses and services that are data-based, you can actually sell this to third parties and make additional revenue. When I looked at where we are now, When I looked at where we are now and where I would desire, and where I think my deputy minister would also want Ghana to be in relation to how we use data in policy making for trade and industry, I observed some challenges. And some of the challenges I saw are here listed. I have tried to also identify what I think will be the root cause of those challenges and preferred some recommendations for same. For instance, if we don't have enough data, the root cause will be that we don't have enough data to make the right insights or to elicit the right insights. The root cause will be probably we lack the data. If we lack the data, what is my recommendation? Then we should run a data audit. Do we have the data to elicit the insights that we desire for trade and industry? If we don't have it, then we have to put in place a proper data collection system. The other challenge I also observed is, do we generate poor insight from our data because our data that we have is porous or because it's erroneous? If you have that kind of problem, I suspect, or I'm suggesting that it might just be that the source of the data is also of poor quality. We definitely cannot harvest mangoes from orange tree. So if the source of the data is bad or is poor, then the quality of the data you will be getting from there would also be what? Equally poor. So in that instance, I'm suggesting that we should institutionalize data quality management as well as having a validation process that will run through the entire data value chain. If the problem is because we don't have the sufficient talents and we don't have the adequate policies or management practices in place, then we might want to look at what infrastructure we have in place and what policies we have and the security and how we have resourced our data collection system. And those are some of my suggestions for addressing that problem. And one of the key things is you need to employ the right talents to manage your data for you. And if we have data, and they're from different platforms, and they're from different domains, but we cannot merge them, and they don't share information, which is one of the things we have in developing countries, duplication. Different agencies are collecting the same data, they don't share information. When we have this kind of problem, you will see that we need to have a merger. We need to merge. We need to have a common platform where our data is collected, like a national statistical system. I think Ghana Statistical Services is proposing something like that. That is what we should be looking at, because that is exactly what Singapore did in 2014. Yeah, that is exactly what Singapore did in 2014 when they introduced the Smart Nation Initiative. And what was their Smart Nation Initiative? They wanted to leverage on the national database that they have. They wanted to use technology and data-driven solutions to enhance the quality of life of their citizens. And they looked at some key sectors in Singapore. They looked at urban planning, they looked at public safety, they looked at healthcare as well as transportation. And today, they have a national hub for data that is open, and they have it on their site. That is not showing here. It says completely free forever. So whether you're using the data for commercial or for personal use, the data, you can have it completely free. And all their platforms share information. The next one I want to share is the story of China. China, I don't know of any other country that deploys data on its citizens and use artificial intelligence as much as the nation of China does. And they have actually also vowed that the present ruling Communist Party, they have vowed to intensify efforts to unleash the potential of artificial intelligence using the data that they collect on their nation, on their citizens. And we can see that some 40 years ago, China was a closed country. It did not really have international diplomatic relationships with many countries. But today, it is one of our success stories that the world celebrates as a world superpower. So in conclusion, I hope I have not been a boring teacher. So in conclusion, I hope in my presentation that I've been able to show you the importance of making data-driven policies in trade and industry and how we can leverage our data that we can collect to gain insights, to also assess our risk, to be able to improve our performance. In doing this, I believe that we would have enhanced our operational efficiency. So In short and in summary, we know that data enables organizations to raise their level of efficiency, which is the same for the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Data can also help us to strategize, and we can also use our data to identify insights into the increasing world demands for goods and services. And then finally, we should foster collaboration between government and private agencies so that we have a common data platform where information is readily exchanged across partners. Yes, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Stephen Amwa. Thank you for your invitation. Thank you, Nana, and thank you everyone who has made time to be here this morning to be part of this seminar. I also want to acknowledge my colleague in the office. She also helped in getting some of the materials that I have used in preparing my talk. I'm an academic person, so we always have to declare our source of information so that we're not accused of plagiarizing. So these are some of the sites that I have visited to prepare my talk. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.
Round of applause again for our keynote speaker, Professor Atunuke Olusola Adebanji. Data has become indeed the lifeblood of modern society, and rightly so. The enablements we've seen, the evidence-based decision-making, and also data for research and development, etc. Here in this country, we've seen the impact of data in trade facilitation and customs efficiency with the deployment of the integrated customs management system. That's the icons at the ports, and we see the evidence of it as well, and how that has impacted on our trade and development, and also the custom duties in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, a reminder, this is the second edition of the Financial Economics Seminar, Ghana. We're live from the UPSA auditorium, also live on the Joy News channel. We're live across all social media platforms, Joy News TV. Our first speaker is the Managing Director of the GCB Bank PLC. He has nearly 30 years of experience in leading strategic teams within international and domestic financial institutions. His executive management roles spans over 16 years, including his previous position as Director and Global Head of Afrexim Bank. With expertise in various banking sectors, he has successfully managed transactions exceeding $10 billion across Africa. Our speaker today holds an executive MBA and bachelor's degree in agriculture from the University of Ghana, Legon. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's put our hands together as we welcome Mr. Kofi Adomako, Managing Director, GCB Bank PLC. Let's put our hands together for him.
The representative of His Royal Majesty in Taki Eko Sekimikamachi. Permit me stand on existing protocol. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I stand before you today with a deep sense of gratitude and excitement as we gather here at the Financial Economic Seminar. This esteemed gathering serves as a platform for insightful discussion and the exchange of ideas on a subject that holds immense significance for shaping thought leadership as we navigate our country through the current economic challenges. The chosen theme is directly aligned with the well-being of our economy, employment creation, and the overall sustained development of our nation. Mr. Chairman, when I was asked to make this speech, I did a very brief research, but as I was progressing with the research, I realized that this topic has been debated very robustly and aggressively by all stakeholders, even before I was born. This topic is on the agenda of all emerging and developing countries' governments. It's discussed at various cabinets. It's even on the agenda of our AU socio-economic impacts, economic impacts on trade and industry. Africa has been grappling with that challenge. So I looked at it and I said, I will still do justice to the topic, but I will give it a banker's view. I will look at things from the perspective of a banker. So what I intend to present today has been organized as follows. I'll review and comment on the role of effective policies in promoting industrialization and trade in African countries, especially using Ghana as an example. I will also spend some time discussing Ghana's 3 major industrialization episodes. I have looked at Ghana's socio-economic policies and how they have affected trade and industry, and I have put them in 3 buckets. And I'll go through that. We'll also review the challenges of import reliance and mixed results in export expansion programs. Better. In export expansion programs, we shall also assess the impact of import substitution policies versus export development. Finally, I plan to share a few emerging ideas on how private sector-led businesses can sustain the growth agenda through trade and industrialization. So, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, effective socio-economic policies play a pivotal role in promoting industrialization and providing a conducive environment for businesses to thrive. This includes measures such as promoting innovation, research and development, providing infrastructure, utilities, facilitating access to finance, and fostering a skilled workforce. By implementing targeted industrial policies, governments can encourage the growth of strategic industries, attract investments in manufacturing and production sectors, and promote value addition to raw materials. Additionally, supporting the development of the private sector and entrepreneurship can further enhance industrial growth, as these enterprises often serve as the backbone of developing economies, creating employment opportunities and driving innovation. Mr. Chairman, the real development challenge today for Africa, for developing countries today, in this new millennium, is a transition that African countries must make in their socio-economic structure and human capital to achieve sustainable development. For example, 2 African countries, Ghana being one of them, dominate in the production of cocoa beans since the early 1940s. They jointly control 10%. However, they produce 65 to 70% of cocoa beans, but they jointly control only 10% of a 120 billion cocoa industry. Okay? This example runs through Africa in the extraction and exports of primary raw materials, such as cocoa, gold, and you can go on and on and on. We produce commodities in large quantities. We export them in raw, at best, primary processing, but mostly in raw form, and we import back again in finished. We don't determine prices because we don't have the capacity to do so because of the way the trade is carried out. And we import back this. And then we ourselves complain about non-availability of jobs. The real issue is that those jobs are all being exported. And until we take the right type of policies and implement those policies, and the first speaker spoke, one of the challenges in implementing those policies is that we never have the right data. And so a lot of decisions that are made are not founded on facts. But therein lies our jobs. And therefore, that is the challenge Africa is grappling with. It is therefore imperative that we take the necessary steps to elevate the role of trade and industrialization, anchored with sound financial systems to drive the growth agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, since independence, Ghana has undergone 3 major industrialization episodes, namely the inward overprotected import substitution strategy, which I put in the 1960 to the 1983 bucket, the outward liberalized strategy during the period of 1984 to 2000, and since 2001, the private sector-led accelerated industrial development strategy. The inward overprotected import strategy from 1960 to 1983 relied on import substitution, industrialization, through high levels of effective protection. It involved a reliance on large-scale public sector investment as the leading edge of industrial development, the application of import restrictions and tariffs to protect and support the import substitution strategy, and extensive use of administrative controls to determine incentives and allocate resources for industrialization. The outward liberalized industrialization strategy from 1984 to 2000, however, focused on industrial restructuring under the Structural Adjustment Program, and you recall the Economic Recovery Program. The goal was to create an internationally competitive industrial sector based on highly efficient import substitution and increased export approach. This strategy involved the removal of price and distribution controls, abolishing import licensing, privatization of state-owned enterprises, and the implementation of industrial policies to assist distressed but potentially viable state-owned enterprises. Since 2001, Ghana has pursued a private sector-led accelerated industrial development strategy. The industrial architecture is based on value-added processing of Ghana's natural resource endowments through the private sector. Mr. Chairman, Ghana has implemented import substitution policies to reduce reliance on imported goods and promote domestic industries. Successive governments have taken measures to support the growth of domestic industries and reduce imports in sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and services. However, it is surprising to note that Ghana continues to be heavily import reliant. We spoke about importation of, I think it was used clothing, Ghana being the number one. This matter came up before, and in discussions, I was made to understand Ghana is used as a conduit. And so a lot of these second-hand clothing come, and then they feed into other neighboring countries. So Ghanaians are not wearing the world's largest clothing. But the facts of the matter and the statistics represent so. So it is a matter that must be dealt with. However, it is surprising to know that Ghana continues to be heavily import reliant. In 2021, Ghana was the world's largest, as was said, importer of used clothing, valued at $214 million. While local textile companies such as ATL, Akosombo Textile, GTP, I think that stood for Ghana Textile Printing Company, continue to struggle to remain profitable. Drapon Textiles and GTMC, established in the 1960s with over 3,000 employees, are virtually non-operative today. The total value of rice importation in 2021 alone was a staggering $500 million. Despite the large arable land for rice cultivation in Ghana. Furthermore, Ghana was the second largest importer of tomatoes and tomato paste in 2022, with an estimated 700 million, only after our biggest brother, Nigeria. Ghana has also placed significant emphasis on export expansion policies to increase its share in the international trade and boost economic growth. However, the total value of exports, which was in a slide I saw, the total value of exports, largely dominated by commodities, has declined over the last 5 years from 16.2 billion to about 14 billion in 2021. I quote from the OEC, Observatory of Economic Complexity document. This can also be attributed to some of the challenges that we were encountered with or we faced during the COVID era. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is evidently clear that trade liberalization, market deregulation, and the adoption of export-oriented development and import substitution models primarily based on commodities have not delivered the expected results. This calls for a delicate balance between the two policy regimes underpinned by value addition models. Therefore, the policy direction should aim for continuity, coherence, and mutually beneficial partnerships with the private sector to drive the industrialization agenda. Mr. Chairman, I advocate for a comprehensive and unified national industrial development agenda, where political choices revolve around competing approaches to executing the agenda. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when examining the policy perspectives, three critical questions arise concerning the core developmental objectives that will propel our economy's transformation through trade and industrialization. And the three questions that I pose to all of us are: how to empower the private sector, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises, to expand productive employment and technological capacity within a very highly competitive and manufacturing sector. My second question is how to promote agro-based industrial development to ensure value addition. And the third is how do we leverage industrialization for sustainable poverty reduction and reduce income inequalities across Ghana. Answering these questions will enable us shape policies, those socio-economic policies that will enhance and promote industrialization. Mr. Chairman,
permit me to share a few ideas in responding to these critical questions. For the first question, addressing the issue of how to empower the private sector to expand productive employment and technological capacity within a highly competitive and challenging manufacturing sector, there are a few issues I would like to bring to our attention. One is access to finance. The banking sector in Ghana has witnessed significant credit growth in recent years. According to Bank of Ghana, total outstanding loans reached approximately 70 billion cedis in 2022, representing a growth of 23% compared to the previous year of 2021. This expansion in lending has been driven by enhanced focus on various sectors, including manufacturing, agribusiness. However, more needs to be done urgently to provide reasonably priced and patient capital to support industry. Mr. Chairman, the creation of the Development Bank of Ghana to provide affordable long-term funding to businesses is a great step in the right direction. However, the current business model of providing funding for on-lending by commercial banks alone should evolve into an ECA or export credit agency type model to finance the exports of merchandise and other value-added goods out of Ghana. In achieving this, our development banks must mitigate some of the risks commercial banks bear in financing manufacturing and industrial merchandise, particularly to promote intra-Africa trade. Strengthening market access is another area we need to pay attention to. Facilitating market access for private sector by establishing robust trade facilitation mechanisms, reducing non-tariff trade barriers, and promoting international cooperation will enable the private sector to expand their customer base, domestically and internationally. This will lead to increased employment and technological capacity. The African Continental Free Trade Area provides a perfect opportunity and catalyst for expanding and accelerating market access. The use of the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, PAPS, today enables companies trading among African countries in their respective domestic currencies. Capacity building is another area. A comprehensive capacity building support framework, including mentorship programs, training initiatives, and networking opportunities, must be established to position the private sector to compete internationally. Partnerships with organizations such as the UPSA, GIZ, UNDP, and NGOs can help decentralize access and equip SMEs with the necessary skills and knowledge to navigate the challenges of a competitive manufacturing sector and optimize their technological capacity. For instance, the role of Council of Technical and Vocational Education and Training, COTSVET, needs to be upscaled and aligned with industry objectives. Access to information and technology. Improving access to market information and technological advancements for SMEs through platforms for knowledge sharing, market intelligence, and technology transfer will foster competitiveness and productivity. For instance, Afrasian Bank developed the digital platform that allows for due diligence checks of individuals and businesses across Africa. This enhances trade among African countries at low costs, and the platform is referred to as MANSA. The second question, is on how to promote agro-based industrial development to ensure value addition. In addressing this, Mr. Chairman, we may consider investment in infrastructure, developing modern infrastructure as used for industrial parks, irrigation system, storage facilities, transportation networks, and processing plants will support commercial agribusiness activities. This will facilitate production, processing, and distribution of agricultural products, enabling value addition and market competitiveness for both exports and local consumption. Standardization is a very also key in terms of benchmarking for the export sector. And finally, Mr. Chairman, how we leverage industrialization for sustainable poverty reduction to reduce income inequalities across Ghana. Inclusive industrialization is one area that we should spend some time on. By prioritizing inclusivity in industrialization activities, by implementing policies that promote equitable access to employment, training, and entrepreneurial opportunities will benefit all segments of society, particularly marginalized groups and regions. Initiatives like the 1D, 1F seek to redistribute industrialization across the country, but must be given a more and very focused national approach in terms of where resources are, capacity to assess those resources, and make sure that they work within a very feasible framework. The enhancing skills and development and education, investing in education and skills development programs that will align with the needs of the industrial sector, especially in science and technology, engineering and mathematics, the STEM fields, will enhance productivity, foster innovation, and increase employment and reduce income inequalities. Also, sustainability of inclusive value chains is a very important aspect that we should pay attention to. Mr. Chairman, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, the impact of socio-economic policies on trade and industry in developing countries cannot be underestimated. It is crucial for governments, private sector entities, and stakeholders to collaborate effectively in shaping a conducive environment for industrial growth and economic development. By implementing targeted industrial policies, supporting SMEs and entrepreneurship, promoting value addition, and prioritizing inclusive and sustainable industrialization, developing economies like Ghana can overcome the challenges they face and achieve sustained growth and poverty reduction. Let us seize the opportunities presented us by trade, industrialization, and strategic partnerships to unlock the full potential of our nation and create a prosperous future for us all. Thank you once again to Honorable Dr. Stephen Amwa and his team for organizing this important seminar and for the invitation to share my thoughts on this vital topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi Adamako. Please, round of applause for him once again. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is the second edition of the Financial Economic Seminar, Ghana 2023. And we're live on the Joy News channel on TV and across all social media platforms. Our next speaker is one who defends his ideals with passion. He's a member of parliament for the Nshiaesu constituency and the Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. He's a renowned finance and investment expert, holding a PhD in actuarial science with a focus on finance and investment. He is also a holder of MSc in Strategic Financial Management from the University of Derby. Dr. Amoah's extensive work experience includes serving as CEO of Maslock and CFO of Ken City Group. He is the CEO of Syntec Portfolio Services Limited and a member of the various committees and boards in this country, including the Board of Directors of GCB Bank PLC. Our next speaker has participated in international programs, sharing his insights on investment and opportunities and challenges on the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Dr. Stephen Amoah, as Member of Parliament for Nshaiso Constituency, Deputy Trade and Industry Minister. Please, as our next speaker, let's put our hands together for him.
Chairman of the occasion, Nana Taki, forgive me, I can't mention all the names, forgive me. All protocols observed. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Because of time factor, I think I have to go straight so that I can communicate the salient extract that I deem very important to the cause of what we are actually advocating. When we were trying to choose this topic, it actually appeared or sounded a little bit broad. But we all like, okay, let's find the data aspect, and then from the banking sector, and from the practitioners, that's the greater Chamber of Commerce and Co., and then the academia. So I am particularly very happy about the fact that we've been able to educate the public from all these critical dimensions of our economy. I wouldn't waste much time because definitions of economy, most people know, and it's easy to find different definitions. But one of them that I will try to actually situate in this context is definition made by Lipsy and Crystal, 2015. And that is the amount of activity in the economy as a whole and the responsibility of government to influence that activity. There are others that talks about the fact that it is a science of making decision. And of course, we know decision-making processes, the key issues are goals or objectives and alternatives. And that is where most leaders and decision-makers and authorities, most managers and even directors, in my opinion, do not get it right. Because once you get it wrong, you get bad results. So I'll move straight. And of course, financial economics is very important, which is my field. And of course, it is an aspect of economies that deals with the policy, use, and distribution of resources in markets, usually concentrating on the market itself, trade, portfolios, and industries. And we all understand what policies are. Principle of action, cause, controls, adopted and validated by governments in governing states. And trade and industry also actually concerned with the entire value chain or system of manufacturing business activities from inbound to outbound with its potential risk management. I would like to put this piece across. I'm not going to do a lot of numbers today, as I normally do. The industrial or market economy of most developing economies, including Ghana, is predominantly the defensive type. Ladies and gentlemen, when I say defensive type, their systematic risk index is less than 1. And what it means is that when the economy of our country moves, say 10% or 10 steps, the market generally in our country does not move along with it, maybe 1% or doesn't move at all. And it's one of the major reasons most of the times when policymakers tout themselves with the fact that, oh, the economic indicators are good. Ghanaians normally say we don't feel in our pocket. And this is the meaning, the technical meaning or reason underpinning all these feelings you have. And it also underpins the fact that SMEs occupies about 90% of our market establishment and employs about 80%, as against even the global average of 67%. And we all know the factors that do impact industries and trades. Some of them are our ecosystem, how relevant stakeholders interact, and also the energy sector. We all know energy is very critical when it comes to the performance of our industries, our factories and even the trading activities. Infrastructure is very key. What is happening between the rural areas where they grow raw materials or get natural resources, and then the urban areas that we have most of the factories to process these things, manufacture them, and also trade them. What happens? If the roads are bad, if the infrastructure is not there, if the lighting system or the energy, whatever, is not good, if water provision is inadequate, what happens? And then we also talk about credit availability in our country, which also impacts that, and its cost, and government policies, and exchange rate, transportation, they are all factors. But my concentration will be on 2 key areas because of time factor. One is the management in terms of government policies of our monetary and then fiscal policies. I normally talk about them, and I'll keep on emphasizing them till I see the needed change. Of course, when we talk about monetary policy, we deal with money circulation, which I'm not going there, and then interest rate, basically the policy rate. There has been a debate. Thanks be to God, I was in UK last week or so, and the same dispute or debate or argument or controversy had been given rise to by the relevant stakeholders there, whilst others were supporting my case, that we keep on increasing policy rate, and for that matter, interest rate, with the aim of reducing inflation. It's been happening in Ghana for a long time, and I have this one argument, that it's sometimes unduly affecting trade and industry. Why? If the inflationary rate is being caused is rising as a result of cost push, you should be careful the way you adjust interest rate or policy rate up. Assuming our cost of doing business is going up, and we know that one of the major cost variables is interest rate in Ghana, because hardly you see a lot of people entering into equity businesses. Normally it's debt financing, you borrow from the banks. And then you increase interest rate again, what happens? And we call something strategic drift. And I think that's the description I normally give, that you have a strategy, but the strategy is rather worsening your how do I put it? Your goal, or no, your challenge, sorry, or your difficulty, your setback. It's not rather solving the problem, but it's worsening it because the strategy does not really fit the actual program that you're actually trying to work on. And it's happening in Ghana. When policy rate was around 12.5, interest rate was 15.7. We started increasing interest rate. We call it inflationary rate target monetary policy. And it went as far as policy rate went to almost 30%. And inflation went to about over 40%. So it wasn't addressing it. So when we are trying to deal with some of these issues, that governments and other policymakers and decision-making bodies such as Central Bank of Ghana, although to me they are doing so much well, they should sometimes they shouldn't depend so much on the global application of some of these models, but we should do specifics, because it's very important that tailor-made application of policies rather bring the expected resource of a society or specific community, and it's very, very important. Another area I would like to also concentrate on is also the fact that you just realize that there's something also being done within the same financial institutions. I don't know whether Bank of Ghana has to control it or is it fault of the banking industry. My boss is here. It's also the issue of, in this country, government competing with private sector on our market at a higher interest rate. To be honest, I've never seen any country that does that, at least not with the developed economies. It defeats the simple principles of the higher the cost, the higher the risks, the higher expected returns. All over the world where the economy is properly developed and managed, risk-free assets or securities give you less returns. They give you less returns. But if you look at our country today, and for the past 30 years, even up to now, not only under one regime, you realize that most of the times, interest rates or the returns investors get from even private securities such as the banks and others are rather less than the risk-free. Just look at this. I said this last year, but because it's not getting the needed attention, I just brought it in this time. The blue thing is the returns. That if I have money and I invest in government securities, that's the blue line. The rest are the banks to save time. And if you look at all the formulas in the world, or the models we use to calculate even returns from some of these securities, they don't fit Ghana here. They are not applicable. So there is a fundamental challenge when it comes to some of the policies that we as a country we are going through. And trust me, practically, if anybody or any bank has money to invest, and the government source, which is classified as risk-free, is giving you more returns, will the bank give the money to my company? No. The bank will invest in government securities. And because of that, a lot of the companies in our countries cannot grow organically because there is inadequate of funds. And even the Russian funds that they will get from the banks will always have double-digit interest rate. And that's why our economy, I describe it as double-digit interest rate economy. It is very serious. And just listen to the consequences. One, what it means is that the companies cannot expand enough to employ the labor force. Two, the companies cannot produce enough to meet demand. So we'll be forced to import. And once we import, we will demand more dollars, and our currency will be weak. So it is a serious technical or fundamental anomaly that I wonder why I've made this statement in Parliament. I got support from minority, majority. I've been saying this on radio. I am sure major stakeholders have heard this. But I find it very difficult that we have a society or a country that we can identify our challenges and problems for years. But whether we coming together as stakeholder bodies or groups or individuals to solve it, I don't know. Sometimes I find it very difficult. So these are the key emphasis that I think authorities and those whose jurisdiction handle some of these things should listen and find a way to dealing with it, because it can never ever work anywhere in the world that governments can compete with private sector, not only one government, all government, and gives higher returns. You are destroying private sector. And of course, private sector, contemporary development or socio-economic framework, it's the engine of growth. So it's something that we need to take it extremely serious. It is very, very important. Other areas is also the fiscal policies. We talk about the fact that government needs to always cut down expenditure. It is true. But let's also accept the fact that this country's economy, or our country, runs what I also describe as negative effective tax rate economy. What I mean is that monies outlaid to households, monies from all government to households, are always less than monies government gets from Ghana internally, domestically, without loans. So what is happening? And this is what government used to finance. And so far as we don't pay realistic taxes, so far as we don't work on the leakages in our tax systems, so far as we don't include other stakeholders in paying taxes in Ghana, we will continue to borrow. That's a fact. Let's be very practical. And that's why sometimes I find it too difficult understanding professors and doctors who are claiming they are not politicians, not telling us the truth. About 2 million out of about 31 million Ghanaians pay direct tax. Talking about leakages, you weep. So if you have a country that the only or the main financing sources are either you generate revenue internally or you borrow, and internally you are not getting what you are supposed to get, what happens? You borrow. And if you have issues such as COVID and the Russian war, where you had impaired productivity, where you were asked to stay home, but you'll be paid and fed, what happens? And you have revenue shortfall of about 12 billion. You'll be forced to borrow because you won't let your case die. So these are some of the policies that the government and other authorities and the Ghanaian community and stakeholders should look at with all sincerity, or in all sincerity. And I think one of the things authority must do is to look at which of the expenditure items can we even take away from our expenditure budget or whatever, or reduce. You just don't decide, I want to reduce by 10, 4, 5%. You need to do proper correlation analysis, regression analysis, to find out which of the items do not impact your GDP. So when you cut them, it will not impact them, and you can sustain, appreciable level of poverty. It's done. I wonder, you cannot run economy qualitatively, profoundly, and you get results. It's about numbers. So it is time we introduce new paradigm shift in dealing with quantitative policies more than qualitative. So we know our numbers. And also I'm very particular and happy about the data issue. Without correct data with integrity, there is nowhere, anywhere in the world, any country can succeed. Because they say garbage in, garbage out. If you say that everybody here is 3 feet, you make decisions for 3 feet people, which is not true. So it is extremely important that talking about even cutting down expenditures, we should know areas we can cut and still grow optimally, and still also make sure we deal with poverty levels. And then the Ghanaian community should also help governments, whether NDC or MPP, help the government when it comes to decisions on tax payments. Because it's like asking your father to fly you to the moon, and your father is not a pilot. We will keep on complaining and recycling our problems. So it is extremely important that we look at these things. Also, it is also important that we are able to design the needed equilibrium or harmonize the relationship between our fiscal policies and monetary policies. Increment and stroke or introduction of new taxes. Expanding government programs and projects. Adjusting the policy rate upward. Increasing lending rate. All these things, in my opinion, in the short term or medium term will have impact negatively on industries. I'm also not saying it's not good to do them. So we should be able to manage the two sets that when you are increasing each of them, we see how others will not be increasing at the same time to bring an untoward burden on the industry players. It is very, very important. Because of my time, I have to run away. I have to jump. I have these relevant issues. Ghana runs negative. I've said that tax leakages, involvement of key stakeholders in perpetuating tax leakages. I think this is a very serious issue. The GRA, the customs, the politicians, the media, the general public. We have a country that, in the name of goods in transit, they'll put it in Burkina Faso cars, Ivory Coast cars, and they are not paying the needed tax. They get to somewhere between Ashanti and Northern they offload into another and go and sell. And the same people will come and blame Mahama and Anato. The same people. And we have a cartel doing that. It is time some of these things are addressed in a way that nobody will be favored. It's very important. I think we need strategic and tactical management of our fiscal space. It's extremely important that we review this exercise. And by doing that, we should have even a body that will include the technocrats, especially the bankers, the academians, the government, to always sit down and plan, even before another year begins, with all the projections, so that that particular government will have input, proper input, in planning how we adjust some of these important independent variables. And I also think, I've talked about monetary policy, data has been dealt with, and then over-reliance on a few but expensive energy options. Go to the Caribbeans today. I met them fantastically, the way they are using solar to even do almost everything about water that runs in their country. And it's not very expensive according to them. And a skill component of our labor force, meritocracy. One of the things that is destroying our economy, our society, is lack of meritocracy. We find it difficult talking about it. In strategic manner, they say configuration of key resources and core competencies. My illiterate, over 90-year-old mother can do something I can't do. If you put me in her position, I'll fail. And Ghana here, it is so predominant, so profound. Respectfully, what Nana can do, I can't do. It's not possible. The cameraman there, in spite of the fact that I have PhD, it doesn't mean I can do his work. So it is time we honestly moved away from this lack of meritocracy management of our society. That people are allowed to do what they can't do. Defenders striking, defending, midfielders on the bench. I'm not talking about one particular regime. That is how the society and most African countries are. And we need to move away from these things. And then, government do not create any value chains. I said that and I've explained that. Because of my time factor, I've jumped a lot anyway. My proposition or recommendation, especially at times that have low correlation GDP, I've said that we need to make sure we do proper mathematics and cut them and know our figures. That if it is 30%, we are cutting A, B, C, D. They don't impact our economy. We know them by this number and we are monitoring. Because tax management is calibrated in nature. Depending on what is prevailing, it has to go up or down. But we have a country, when NDC is passing, NPP say, hey. NPP is passing, NDC, you say, hey. They influence the public and you say, hey. Then we also want everything free. We cannot run a country such as this. In United Kingdom, base rate, which of course affects interest rate, post-COVID has been increased as of now, as of last week, 1,800%, from 0.25 to 4.75. I even heard they've increased it to now 5%. 46-year all-time high price of goods and services. Almost all essential services in the country are on strike. I am not comparing Ghana to them, but I'm saying that they that are even better than us, they we depend on economically. We import almost everything from them. It is extremely important that as a country, we need to revolutionize our minds and begin to appreciate the right thing. Other than that, we will suffer and suffer and suffer and we'll listen to politicians all the time because somebody wants to come to power. I always say that African countries are countries that have seen that people will do everything on earth to become leaders, but they won't do everything on earth to know how to lead. They will pay to social media, pictures, the fans, media will put them front pages, but they can't do the work. But elsewhere, along that chain or critical activity power, they will learn how to lead. They will find out. You think we really, really know the size of land we can grow maize, onion, ginger, pineapple, apple? Do we know? Have we done all the soil tests? We know we have the data against what we demand. We understand the value chains. No wonder we had Commander Sugar Factory for two different regimes for so many years. the problem is sugarcane. Have you heard this thing before? How could we set up a factory and the problem is the raw material we need? So without availability of land and knowing where you get it to feed the capacity of machine, why do you even think of setting it up? These are serious issues, sometimes difficult to talk about. But I think we can no longer stay aloof, sit aloof. We should be ready to face the criticisms and the confrontations and speak the truth. And work on our mindset, especially the young ones, and build the society that we need, a country that we have. Forest, semi-forest, savanna, semi-savanna, coastal belt. We have almost every kind of fruit, every kind of minerals. We have almost everything. Yet, somebody finishes school after 5 years, no job. Why? Simply creating the connection between raw materials and production. Meanwhile, in terms of labor force, in terms of skill component of the labor force, good doctors, good engineers, good this, we have all of them. So what is it? A mindset. And I think leadership should work on something. We need to begin to think and say that it's not about somebody's interest, it's about this country. Without that, even no matter the policy any government will implement, it will not work out. And then our entrepreneurs, I'll end with this. You can give them all the monies in the world. I'm sure my boss will say it. They will come and say, we need more. The company is collapsed. Because our entrepreneurs need capacity. They need orientation. Most billionaires in Ghana is as a result of contracts and big connections. Not bad anyway, I don't have evidence. But building businesses from scratch and understanding value chains, no. So I think we need to have policies that will handle our entrepreneurs to become globally competitive. It's very unfortunate I have to stop, but without paying realistic taxes, without stopping the leakages, without embarking on economy of meritocracy, without dealing properly with monetary policy management, without government stopping borrowing on our market at a higher rate than the private sector, trust me, and without you, me, everybody, changing his mindset towards national development and ensure that we can draw that equation between productive working hours and actual working hours, we should forget. We can cry the whole world. And the media to be honest enough to report the truth and be serious with things that are educative. We should forget. And the pastors preaching the right Bible message. Because when we were kids, me, I'm not perfect. I always say that I'm not perfect. I sin, I make mistakes. But there are things I can never do because of Sunday school. Are we having the same thing today? Building a country, it calls for collective effort from all stakeholder groups. Tradition, religion, politicians, media, security, judiciary. Once these institutions are really working properly, honestly, towards building a society for the betterment of everyone, the interest of society, and not individual and parochial interests, within 10, 15, 20 years, nobody will leave Ghana and go anywhere, and we'll have a very befitting, strong, stable, viable, and growing economy. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The sermon according to Dr. Stephen Amoah, and the saints shall say amen. Please put your hands together for him. Thank you very much. A reminder, we're live on your Joy News channel as well as across the social media platforms. And this is the second edition of the Financial Economics Seminar, Ghana 2023. A number of things that our second speaker touched on: double-digit interest rate economy with all its attendant consequences, and the approach of policy formulation with all the sincerity that is needed as well to ensure that we gain the most from it as a country. Our next speaker is a policy officer for trade and economic affairs at the Netherlands Embassy in Ghana. Possesses expertise in trade, macroeconomic analysis, and private sector development, with a background in international trade law, commercial transactions, and international relations. She has worked in various roles, including training and business development, director of operations, project manager. Our next speaker has also been a guest lecturer, resource person, and written a number of issues on topics such as trade, economic policy, and empowerment. Experience with United Nations organizations have provided insights into development trends and humanitarian intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest, Mame Ajua Awinado. Can you regate, please? Let's put our hands together. Thank you very much.
So standing on all existing protocol, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having me here today. When I was coming, I had so many things going on in my head. Sometimes when you do these things a few times, you begin to understand when you get a platform, you have a responsibility to make sure that you do not come to impress, but you want to impact. So I said to myself that if I leave here today and you don't hear anything, I hope that I would say something that will make you go back and want to do something better in this country as a Ghanaian and as an African. I want to start with a little story. Honorable Stephen Amo, as he spoke, I thought about what really drives me every day. And I grew up in Zimbabwe. So because of my father's work, we got to move around a lot. And I was around the age of 6 when I started to discover who I was. So we're talking about socio-economic policies, right? And we think it's something abstract. But when you look at socio, and the root word that comes from Latin that says socios, it talks about the fact that it means people, ally. So you cannot talk about socio without the individual. And you cannot talk about societies without looking at you and I. So I was 6 when I discovered who I was. Right? But you would think, oh, what did I discover? Well, I was living in Zimbabwe at a very crucial time where race was a very big deal. And my identity was defined for me before I found it for myself. Someone told me, you're black. Why are you so black? Is your blood green? And being asked that at the age of 6, you're wondering, you're being asked about one thing that you cannot change about yourself. So every day I went home and I didn't like how I looked. I didn't understand why I was black. Most of the black people in school, usually parents will come, they were either garden boys or house helps picking up their kids. And you would go out and you see all the nice white families with their children and think, wow, I wish my parents were also white. And so I realized that growing up with this mindset, we moved around a lot. And one day I came back to Ghana in primary school. Somebody asked me, why are you so tall? Your name sounds funny. Where is it from? My father's from the upper east of Ghana. My mother is a Fanti. So at that time, being from the north was somewhat inferior. We're a minority group. So I was ashamed of that too. Ashamed of how I looked, my race. Ashamed that my father was from a minority group because it was associated with a lot of poverty. So as I moved around, you're going to school, trying to achieve. You don't know that you are sick somewhat in the head. I carried a disease that many people didn't see because that disease was internal. It wasn't my mind. The disease that associated anything that is development and civilization to another race, to another people. I didn't learn how to speak my own language. Even today, I'm working on that because I was ashamed of how it sounded. So I wanted to sound more English. I didn't like my name. I don't have an English name. So when I mentioned my name, they'll ask me, don't you have a Christian name? And I said, well, that's a name I have. And it wasn't good enough. Today we talk about socio-economic policies, and we're looking at trade and economics. I did an MPhil in international trade law. So sometimes we know all the numbers, we read. And I think nobody sitting here needs to be told how tough things are in Ghana. But whenever we look at these things, we don't go back to the human being. That at the crust and at the core of everything that you look at, whether it's money, whether it's science, it's people. And people shape these things. How people think, how they see the world. So today I want you to just have a look at yourself and ask, do you really think that you know who you are, and how do you see yourself as a Ghanaian? You are asking for change, but what kind of change do you want? Is change for you only the idea that you have a nicer house, nicer car, that you can now look better than other people look? That you can now, show off or flaunt that, hey, I've made it? Because if we're able to answer those questions, we can design policies that really make sense. And why do I say that? Identity is so important because it's linked to trade and industry. If you look at history, so look at, let's say, the story of the Vikings. So the Vikings were known as, there's a word for this, but heathens, right? Because they were not Christian or anything. And if you look at trade that happened in Europe, a lot of ideals and beliefs were shaped by the exchange of goods and services. When you are young and you have a storybook and you open it and it talks about snow, your country is so hot, or Santa Claus, right? Or you are playing with dolls with blue eyes and blonde hair. These are all products that come onto your market. There are people who have never ever stepped in the US, but they just believe that it's heaven because of what? Eating a hamburger, drinking a milkshake. That is trade. So when we look at socio-economic policies, we need to look at what kind of identity are we designing for ourselves as people? How do we really see ourselves as Ghanaians? The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that we have the power to shape society so that we can design economic policies that make sense. Our society must be shaped on things like family values, about oneness, about respect, about integrity, honesty. We look at China, for example. Xi Jinping was talking about the fact that they follow socialism with Chinese characteristics. What are Ghanaian characteristics? Have you ever thought about that? If you look at the Japanese theory, they have something called the Kaizen model of how they even do business, all shaped in culture and identity. The Indians, for example, family is so big. I did my undergrad in India, and family unit is so big, it shapes everything that they do. You look at Ghana, even look at the number of companies that are here. Melcom, for example, is somewhat of a family business. Most of the Lebanese companies that operate here are family-owned companies. But how many family-owned companies do we have here in Ghana? So we need to begin to look at our society and how we see family, how we see trust, integrity, and honesty. Because even with that, when we are shaping or coming up with ideas to shape our society and for economic policy, we are able to design policies that really look at the other, about helping others. We look at GDP, we get excited. When people stand on the platform and talk about economic growth and the numbers, you're like, wow, our economic growth rate. It sounds very intelligent, right? But economic growth, economic development are two separate things. Growth will occur even if government is spending loans. The numbers will go up. Development looks at HDI, the quality of life. There was data recently that showed that when it comes to multi-dimensional poverty, in Ghana, close to 50% are multi-dimensionally poor. Multi-dimensional poverty looks at your health, like health insurance, education. It covers a wide range. People who have good education in your family, your income levels, right? But nobody wants to think that they are poor. Because Ghana, as long as you can eat in some nice restaurant and take a nice picture, you're not poor, you've arrived, right? Or have a car with AC, right? We've arrived. But this is what the data shows. So we need to be able to see that development and growth is not just nice buildings. Our development trajectory has always looked at attracting investment. So the work I do with the embassy, we look at how one of the key things I have to do is to develop a strategy to bring in foreign investors. So actually, about a week ago, I was in the Netherlands, and I had to work with a seed company for a few days. I was doing a course on trade and investment promotion. And I worked with a company that was started by, they call it a 6th-generation seedsman. He's called Simon Groot. The company, East West Seeds, is worth billions of dollars. You know what struck me? On my way to meet him, I went to a place called Eckhuizen, but we went by road, and we passed through a province that didn't exist 60 years ago. It was only water. The Dutch have spent years, because the Netherlands is below sea level. They spent years fighting water. And so they actually had to create a province that didn't exist. And I was like, human beings did this? Wait a second. So that's not it. We meet this man. Simple looking man. First of all, I was so embarrassed because I didn't even think that was him. When his daughter came, I thought she was a secretary. And this is a family-owned business. They've been in this business for 6 generations. That town has multiple family-owned businesses. So for that reason, even in the Netherlands, they have banks, organizations that support family-owned businesses. So you see that the policies are growing with the people. On our way, we stopped by a research institute where you would see, so Netherlands is very flat. So you see like huge farmland, right? And they are growing what they call sugar beets to develop, for sugar and everything. And we saw at this research institute, and I asked the man, so how do you come up with your ideas to help farmers? He said, we don't tell the farmers what to do. The farmers, while farming, they come up with questions. They bring to us, and then we now do research. So for them as scientists, they don't think they know more than the farmer. So that means that the society policy is being shaped with the people, knowing that everybody has a role to play. When Honorable was speaking, he spoke about his mother, and I was thinking of the fact that when you are designing socio-economic policies, the anthropologist is also important. We have something we call neuromarketing. That looks like how the mind works when it comes to marketing strategy, right? Because we have something called the subconscious. There are things you buy today not because you want, but because you went out and saw somebody wearing the same thing, and because maybe society says it's nice, and you don't even know, because I did psychology for my undergrad, they call Pavlov's theory. There are different stimuli that affect how we buy. In Ghana, prestige is a big thing. There are many things that we own now. This 4-wheel drive, people will tell you it's not economical, but everybody wants one on the road. You ask somebody why, you'll say, hey, when you have a 4-wheel drive, nobody will bully you. So you realize that even the buying of vehicles, you're talking about trade and industry, you can have all the factories. People will not purchase what is produced because their minds are tailored towards one thing. So in shaping policy, we need to re-engineer the human mind or the Ghanaian mind to ask ourselves, what are Ghanaian characteristics? What are we trying to do in the next 10 years, 20 years? Looking back, so we don't get up and design a policy. You have the anthropologist, the farmer, talk about trade. Market women, who knows trade more than them? Those who really move goods at the border, they are not there with any digital looking at the stock market and stuff. Those carrying onions and tomatoes to Burkina Faso, they don't know that. But they have something to bring to the table. I think that we need to come down to reality as a people, because there is so much more that we can do if we realize that the real asset in Ghana is not under the earth. It is not in the sky, it's you and me. And Singapore, for example, you think about it, what did Singapore develop out of? In fact, it was a dumping site for trash for a long time. But if you read Lee Kuan Yew's book, you realize that it just took determination and passion of the people. And whether you believe in God or not, there is something about the human being that has been designed to be able to thrive and shape the world. Human beings, look at how, I was saying in the Netherlands, how they've designed a whole province that didn't exist before. So what is our excuse with the weather we have? That means we know all our problems, but we just don't know how to solve them. And maybe it's because of the way we are approaching it. Because our educational system says if you go to school and you go and do PhD, you do all of these things, which is really good, your life will be better. But there are many people who are going to school today and they don't have jobs. Also because your educational system doesn't have the social concept in it saying that what is the Ghanaian trying to achieve? We are a coastal state. We have agriculture. We have a lot of our weather patterns. How are we designing an educational curriculum that matches that to make young people more, employable, to be more effective? We are not trying to build another Europe, another United States, another China. We want to have a better Ghana. And that means that it may not be skyscrapers and luxury homes, but maybe the person who could only eat once a day can now eat twice or 3 times. That's development. So I think that as we sit here today looking at what is social, we should ask ourselves these questions. At one of the things that I get to do with my jobs, that we have a lot of things to support young entrepreneurs. And as Honorable was talking, trust me, a lot of money is being pumped by investors, by development partners to support private sector. But why are we not seeing results? It's ridiculous. When you hear the monies that are allocated, that means that your problem, money is not what takes people to the next level. In fact, what is money? Money is pretty much value. If you really go to the history of how money came out, you'll be surprised. But the idea is that the money is never the paper. The real asset is the mind. That means that's why they always say that you don't need money to start, you need money to grow. But in our part of the world, we are so obsessed with money. So you see $1 million, you start shaking. And then, and then you're like, hey, 1 million, oh my God. And somebody will flaunt it on social media, a bundle of money, and we are panicking. Money is only follows value. That means, and what is value, right? Being able to solve problems. I don't think talking too much would make this, what I'm saying, any more valuable. But I think I just want us to leave with important things, that we need to open up the conversation for change. We need to look at collaboration. When we say socio also means partnership, is friendship, allies. We talk about tomato industry in Ghana. I was telling someone, why should we compete with Burkina Faso? We are talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area. Africa is not seeking to compete with itself. It's seeking to collaborate, to compete with other regions. How can Ghana compete with China? It doesn't make sense. So if there are tomatoes in Burkina Faso, why are we saying we will also produce our own and compete? No. Why don't we have a factory that takes in those tomatoes to compete with brands like Salsa, Italian tomato brands that exist? Why are we all struggling? The Ghanaian market is too small. I also lived in Nigeria, so I was like, look at what Nigeria is doing with soft power today. Something called soft power international relations, through music. Nobody thought Afro beats, what they call Amapiano. I used to be in South Africa too, right? That it's going on, it's changing the world so much that people in Stockholm who speak a completely different language are singing Yoruba songs. We don't understand that actually the world is paving a way for Africa. But it is Africa that has to get ready for what the world is doing. No longer are we sitting there waiting for handouts. And I want to end with two quick things. We can speak all the numbers we want, but if we do not look and see that maybe we have something to offer the world. As Ghanaians, we are very society driven. We are losing it gradually. But when someone's car is spoiled, somebody will come and help. Hey, maybe your mother's car breaks down. Hey, let's go and help her. We have that. People say they come to Ghana. I was talking to one Dutch guy. He said, when I come to Ghana, Ghana feels like home. I don't know why. That means there's something about Ghana that we have to take advantage of. So I really believe that two key things, and I want to just leave the stage. The number one thing is, there's a little story about these insects in this container, and they're talking about how the insects, how high they can actually jump. But the level they were jumping to was much lower than what their inherent nature could do. Why? Because of the kind of container they were put in. Today, we need to break the container we have placed over ourselves. All these so-called, because some other country is doing it, and we are so tight, it has to be this way. Maybe the change we need to see is bottom up with the young people, not telling the young people, this is what you need. Ask them, what do you think? You also have something to offer to the farmer, to the ordinary man and woman. Let's break that glass that limits us to see how far we can jump. And second thing I'll end with is a little story of a hike I had last Friday. We're hiking with my colleagues up this mountain in the eastern region. I don't know what the mountain is called. And the hike got tough. Like, see, I'm a Ghanaian, I hike, I'm like, this is not for me. But we had to do it. And as we began to climb, there were people behind me who were crying, saying, let us go back. There were people in front who had left us behind. Then, as we were going, a colleague of mine, he's Dutch, he went behind us and said, don't listen to those who are saying go back. Climbing a mountain is strategy. It's baby steps. First thing is that our change and the development we want to see will take baby steps. We cannot rush development or growth. We will grow at our own pace as a continent. So as you are in school, to the young people, whoever you are, understand that every single day, as long as you are better than you were yesterday, you've developed or you move forward. Our industries, looking at baby steps. Maybe before you're only producing fabric. Now maybe we can start making t-shirts. We can collaborate. That's why we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. The idea of being African is I am because you are. We need to have more collaborate. We don't have to do what Uganda is doing. what they call a comparative advantage. Some regions have what we don't have. How do we look at that to work together? The second thing I want to say is that there were people who left us behind. You may say, oh, the West has gone ahead. But now my colleague behind me said, the last shall be the first. And the interesting story is, as I was going, I got tired of climbing this mountain because I was in pain. And many of us may be in pain today, and we are thinking, there's no hope in this country. We've told the story so many times, what a waste. But I said, I've come too far to go back. If we go back, what will happen to those who are coming after us? There's a story you have to tell your children and children's children, that you didn't give up on this country, that you were willing to pay the price through the discomfort. As you got closer to the top of the mountain, the pain got intense. And people were angry and they wanted to give up. And the guy said, the closer you are to the top, the more painful it gets. So pushing to the top, I had to tell myself, no matter what, I can't go back. But as I was going, I had a friend. And every time he would say, let me hold your hand and help you a bit. That's what sometimes investment does. Investment is not the way Ghana will develop. It's only one of the options. So we should stop always sitting there waiting and begging. Come and help us. As you are helping yourself, help will come. So even on the way to the mountain, we are climbing a mountain to change. I'm telling you, whether we like it or not, Africa is not going to remain the same. The world is shifting so much, whether we see it. And the real hope is even with the young people. Don't give up on this country. Don't let anyone tell you, don't speak bad about your country. Ghana is all we have. And they say until you find something worth dying for, you haven't lived. Dying doesn't mean going to the grave. It means that every single day you wake up, you say, I choose integrity. I choose hard work. I work in a space where people don't expect that Africans will, or as a Ghanaian, you may do something. So I tell myself, I will go the extra mile. So that if another Ghanaian woman comes, they get that respect because you left a mark. Don't be the reason why the door is closed to the next generation. So as I get off the stage, when you go home and you lie there and you look at your bank account and you think that, what has this country done for me? You have to understand that Ghana is not a place, it's a people. And the people and what this nation is lies in who we are and how we think. And our industries and trade will be shaped by what we want to be and where we see ourselves going. Ghanaians are resilient. Ghanaians are strong. Ghanaians are smart. No longer will we look at our weakness. Let's look at our strength. And together, we can go further. We don't have to go too fast. Baby steps, and we'll get to where we need to get to. Thank you.
Wonderful. Please, put your hands together, do it better. Mame Adwa Awenado Kanyerege. Thank you. Thank you very much. And this is a message especially for the young people. I mean, we, the young people in here. So when you say these things, it makes me feel so old. But thank you. Extremely important. Connecting, in fact, the nexus between this topic, this trade industry, and then also the young people aspiring to uphold the Ghanaian dream, for that matter, and pursue our aspirations, and eloquently done by you. Thank you very much, Mami Adwa Awenado Kanyerige. Our next speaker, before we go for the panel discussion, is a management and political risk professional specializing in sub-Saharan Africa. As Deputy CEO of GIPC, he contributes to strategic direction, finance, and business development with experience in governance and also issues of affairs and consultancy, advisory roles, and research analysis. He holds postgraduate qualifications from the University of Oxford and the King's College, University of London, along with a bachelor's degree from the University of Kent. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is the Deputy CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. So Yao Amating Efriye, please, let's put our hands together for him.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, Your Royal Highness. After that inspiring message, I think I should perhaps leave the auditorium because everything has been said. To the organizers of this very important seminar, the second edition, thank you very much for inviting GIPC to contribute our perspective. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for GIPC to be a part of this important seminar, which allows all of us to speak about the opportunities in Ghana and how we as a country continue to broaden our appeal as a premier investment destination in the continent through innovative policies and reforms. This seminar is essential, especially against the current global context that has amplified protectionism and created a number of distortions to supply chains, which has had ramifications for economies like Ghana. We in Ghana, and for that matter GIPC, are also addressing some of our macroeconomic headwinds, but we see growth as the silver lining for us here in Ghana and indeed the continent. The world is rebounding, albeit sluggishly, and we are no different. Still, the cost of living crisis, the inflationary pressures on food, fuel, and finance are stark reminders that policymakers must hasten, I beg your pardon. The world is rebounding, albeit sluggishly, and we are no different. Still, the cost of living crisis and inflationary pressures on food, fuel, and finance are stark reminders that policymakers must leverage the benefits of the IMF program to restore, reform, and recalibrate Ghana's economic fortunes. We must also remind ourselves that the situation was not that bleak a few years ago. A few years ago, ladies and gentlemen, in an immediate post-IMF setting in 2017, Ghana grew averagely at about 7% from that year to 2019 and was touted for sound financial management and policy innovation. Nonetheless, we at GIPC view our current state of affairs with some optimism and maintain that there is no better place to do business than here in Ghana because we see prospects for nearshoring and making a case for global and local companies to operate from Ghana and export into the vibrant African market, AGOA, and the European market, all of whom we have a preferential trade agreement with. We see partnerships in ICT, sustainable finance, agriculture, industry, forestry, renewables, energy, education and the knowledge economy, healthcare, tourism, that we believe will spur the growth required to improve the balance of payments, provide stability to the currency, restore more substantial external buffers, and importantly, reap the dividends of that which has a multiplier effect on jobs and livelihood. Ladies and gentlemen, this is GIPC's mission in the near term for companies to essentially grow in Ghana and to grow with Ghana. And as has been stated, we are building the much important linkages, local as well as international linkages, to catalyze the collective green shoots of that recovery we all yearn for. And this must be underpinned by opportunity, openness, and optimism. So you essentially ask yourself, why Ghana? We cannot overestimate the importance of our enviable political environment, safety, and peace. The peace dividend, as international policymakers often say, has meant that Ghana has been ranked continuously as the most peaceful country in mainland Africa and the second most peaceful within the continent. Mauritius, incidentally, is the most peaceful country in the continent. Ghana possesses a strong constitutional democratic culture underpinned by separation of powers, freedom of expression, robustness in the rule and application of the law that importantly safeguards company and individual interests. We have a plural media environment, and these constitute the cornerstone for us, the Ghana story. And indeed, Ghana is a desirable investment destination in a volatile West African region because we remain a beacon of hope and stability. And that, ladies and gentlemen, must be emphasized. In Ghana, today, the headline political risk is not about overthrowing of a system or government instability. We here are consensus-driven, and we prefer to debate policy and impact to its people, which is reflected in our approach to trade and investment. Ghana geographically is blessed. We are well positioned with excellent proximity and connectivity to key markets in Africa, Europe, the Middle East, the Indian subcontinent, Asia, North and Latin America, as well as the Caribbean. The world-class Kotoka International Airport recently winning for the third successive year the award for the best airport in the 2 to 5 million passenger category in Africa is noteworthy and worth celebrating. It opens up the world of opportunity for trade and investment with the rest of the world. The Kumasi and Tamale international airports will also expand our global reach and open exciting new markets in the region, providing further impetus to the accessibility problem within the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Ghana is also home to one of West Africa's most prominent and efficient ports. The Tema port on the eastern coastline serves as the feedstock for landlocked ECOWAS countries, ensuring that Ghana remains pivotal to the affairs of the ECOWAS region. The Takoradi port on the western coast also serves as a prominent logistics, oil and gas, and allied industrial zone for our transformational agenda. Takoradi is undergoing a significant transformation and requires substantial investment to help decongest Tema and establish commercial case for more vessels berthing there. Ladies and gentlemen, these access points are pertinent. It means that companies have an easy route to the ECOWAS market, and for the AFCFTA with 1.4 billion people with a combined and growing GDP of 3.4 trillion. Railway development is also vital as Ghana's infrastructural plan accelerates into the near term. And as I speak this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, 3 major railway projects are at various stages of completion with a combined track length of approximately 1,300 kilometers. Vastly improved road networks across the 16 regions of the country and neighboring border towns are providing the transport diversification that we yearn for as a country. And as has been spoken about, the importance of a competitive and an educated labor force should not go remiss. These policies that I am speaking about are people-centered. And in Ghana, we possess our single most important commodity, and I share the sentiments of the previous speaker. And this important commodity is, of course, our people. There is the availability of skills, and we have a trainable workforce. The government curricula, which is now tilted towards STEM and technical vocational education, for us is indeed a game changer, and it reflects the changing education requirements and is a symptom of what the future of work requires. And that policy is accelerated with STEM and is being rolled out across the length and breadth of the country. Thankfully, because of this base that we have, our numeracy and literacy rates in Africa remain competitive, and we possess a dynamic and youthful population. Now, all of this essentially makes Ghana one of the investment bright spots within West Africa. Consistently, the nation has been blessed and ranked within the upper percentile of foreign direct investment destinations within the continent. In West Africa, over the last decade, Ghana either ranks number 1, 2, or 3 as a desirable destination for capital, and collectively we must work to keep that position. Now, despite our near-term headwinds, Ghana today offers a good return on all investment categories. And suffice it to say that government is also not discriminatory or punitive against foreign and local-owned businesses or capital as a matter of policy. However, we always advise that new entrants and established companies register with institutions like the Ghana Investment Promotion Center and work with the Ministry of Trade and Industry to be secured under the ambit of the law. Now, Ghana also possesses vast natural resources. At any given time, we are the leading gold-producing country in Africa. We are the second largest cocoa producer in the world, the third largest bauxite reserves in Africa with over 180 million tons, oil and gas and substantial natural gas reserves, exciting new lithium prospects and transition minerals which will catapult future industries, 60 million tons of manganese, diamonds, 150 million tons of iron ore deposits, 13.5 million hectares of arable land, 6.4 million hectares of cultivable land, which is instructive, 230,000 hectares of irrigable land, and importantly, for those of you who are interested in tourism, 560 kilometers of pristine shoreline. These all present vast investment opportunities. The government has been actively diversifying the economy, nonetheless, through industrialization initiatives such as the famous and working One District, One Factory, where industry will be sparsely populated across the length and breadth of the country. Government is also building the knowledge economy through flagship policies such as the free senior high school education and TVET, which, according to the IMF, is a transformational policy and one of the most creative in Africa, as well as accelerating the digitalization of the economy, particularly in hard and soft infrastructure, to help Ghana leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution and, in the process, ensure efficacy in government, in e-governance for national development. Now, GIPC's strategy to attract investment and to ensure that Ghana continues to remain at the top of this investment and trade conversation essentially seeks three types of capital. Firstly, we seek greenfield, brownfield, and portfolio investments. And we are simplifying the processes for the investor, both local and foreign, to comply with at the GIPC and also benefit from the raft of incentives that government are putting across. Effectively, ladies and gentlemen, we recognize that greenfield foreign direct investment is very difficult to attract and come by, which is why we are also looking at domestic reinvestment. Domestic reinvestment for us remains the lifeblood of the economy. For the economies that you have, the companies you have in your economy present the best prospects. And lastly, I've been warned to sum it up. Ghana is also accelerating a number of business reforms, which is led by the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And GIPC is building consensus on the need to create a new investment code for Ghana in the near term to address the near-term bottlenecks and harmonize investment laws to ensure that we can compete in a post-COVID and post-IMF setting. Now, in rounding up, ladies and gentlemen, we see Ghana favorably. The near-term outlook for us is not too bleak. We have good prospects in the near term. Growth is rebounding. We just recently saw the Q1 figures at 4.2%, which should give us some encouragement. And we see that the average growth is pegged at 5% averagely between now and 2026. We spoke about resilient. Indeed, Ghana is resilient, not because of our short-term impediments. These do not hold us back. We have a dynamic market. We have enormous opportunity and return on investment. We are open and optimistic about the future because despite these near-term impediments, we are forging new relationships externally and locally and establishing linkages through shared values, interest, and pragmatism. And thankfully, because of our geographical proximity, resource and market prospects, reforms agenda, sustainability, and innovation driving the change narrative, compliance to the rule of law that protects investment, guarantees against expropriation, and our enviable political stability and youthful dynamism, we unquestionably believe that this country remains desirable and hope should be the anchor, and that together we can galvanize capital for Ghana and indeed the rest of the continent. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So y'all, I'm watching a free year. Appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a quick cultural break, and right afterwards we'll have the panel discussion, and we'll take concluding remarks from our call it a day. And this is the second edition of the Financial Economics Seminar, Ghana 2023. The Shebre Music and Dance Group will treat us with a cultural trip. Let's put our hands together for them.
nana no wala nibe na gbe.
To discuss the theming issues confronting Ghana's financial and economic sector and proffer the needed solutions. The second edition of the Financial Economic Seminar is happening live on the 28th of June 2023 at the UPSA auditorium. Theme: Impact of socio-economic policies on trade and industries in developing economies. Chairman: His Royal Majesty King Mi Taki Taiko Churu II. Keynote speaker: Professor Atinoke Adebanji, Professor of Statistics, the KNUSC. Main speakers: Dr. Stephen Amoah, Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry; Yao Amating Efreye, Deputy CEO, GIPC; Mame Awenado Kanyunige, Policy Head for Trade and Economic Affairs, Netherlands Embassy in Ghana; and Kofi Adumako, Managing Director, GCB Bank PLC. Time: 9 a.m. Attendance free. Partners: Ghana Gas, GCB Bank, and GIPC. Call 0597 182 673 to book a seat or for any inquiries. Last year, it was massive.
Another problem we have is that most of our estimates, especially on health and other socio-economic indicators, are often uncertain because they are not systematically produced.
We're quite comfortable talking about interest rates, GDP, unemployment rates. We have nice models for that, but we haven't had traditionally models for thinking through culture. In addition, these models didn't allow us to think about how culture should interact with economic policy making.
Corruption has become endemic in the Ghanaian society, and ordinary people encounter it, whether dealing with politicians, civil servants, public servants, your judiciary.
I want to dream, not just a dream as a vision, but I want to sleep and dream. And in my dream, Ghana, we have a single-digit interest rate economy. Ghana, no one should finish school after 4, 2, 3 years and he's home.
This year is going to be bigger and better. Leading experts across the globe converge right here in Accra to discuss the theming issues confronting Ghana's financial and economic sector and proffer the needed solutions. The second edition of the Financial Economic Seminar is happening live on the 28th of June 2023 at the UPSA auditorium. Theme: Impact of socio-economic policies on trade and industries in developing economies. Chairman: His Royal Majesty King Mi Taki Taiko Churu II. Keynote speaker: Professor Atinoke Adebanji, Professor of Statistics, the KNUSC. Main speakers: Dr. Stephen Amoah, Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry; Yao Amating Efreye, Deputy CEO, GIPC; Mame Awenado Kanyunige, Policy Head for Trade and Economic Affairs, Netherlands Embassy in Ghana; and Kofi Adumako, Managing Director, GCB Bank PLC. Time: 9 a.m. Attendance free. Partners: Ghana Gas, GCB Bank, and GIPC. Call 0597 182 673 to book a seat or for any inquiries.